welcome, Boils and Ghouls, to the Slash Incast Halloween virtual convention. We are Handle Whisker, a horror podcast discussing our love of horror movies and the phobias they emphasize. I am your host, Simply Drunk, and tonight I'm being joined by my co-host, Holly Hooch. And Holly, it's been an interesting
Yes.
year for horror fans. We've had
I'll
arguably
say.
two of the most polarizing movies of the past, dare I say, decade, uh, in consecutive months, with James Wan's *Malignant*, which we'll be talking a little bit about tonight, as well as the continuation of David Gordon Green's Halloween trilogy, and the release of Halloween Kills. And on to that, the recent slew of slasher news with the installments for Chucky, Slumber Party Massacre, Scream, and the aforementioned Halloween Kills. I Know What You Did Last Summer. There's been so much stuff kind of compacted into Spooktober in this small little window that we have
Peak
here,
October as
and it's
well.
just like I I have not remembered a Spooktober this stacked in such a long time, where it's been a lot of good news for horror fans, just outright.
It feels like it's been October for a long time, and I really like that feeling. Just nonstop horror.
Mhm.
Love it. And you say these movies are so divisive. I'm so ready for movies to be the divisive thing we're talking about.
Mhm.
So I'm very, very happy to be talking about horror today.
Absolutely. So yes, there has been a lot of stuff going on within the slasher subgenre here recently. But there's been another subgenre this year that has seen some much needed love, and is also home
Mhm.
to personally my most anticipated release of the year. So tonight, we're talking about the recent Giallo releases, and
Giallo.
we're gonna set the
Giallo.
stage for Edgar Wright's upcoming release of The Last Night in Soho, which is gonna be in theaters right around when this is airing at the virtual convention, because it comes out at October 29th. So I cannot wait to see
Excited.
that in theaters. So I feel like the best place to start, as with anything, is of course at the beginning.
The beginning. Yes.
So in the beginning,
La
in in
ragazza
in
che
in
sapeva
in
troppo.
in the before time, right? Giallo had spawned from the late 1920s pulp crime novels, and they really saw their heyday in the 1970s on the big screen. So basically, what you had
Yes.
is, for the films, you had added elements of horror, of madness, uh, more eroticism, which really transformed these crime stories into more of a psychological type thriller.
And a little bit of fetish.
Yeah,
I mean, let's be real.
a lot of fetish stuff. And
It's hot stuff, steamy.
so compared to like the books, Jalo murders on screen are way more grotesque, usually more artistic. Sometimes, it's psychosexual in nature. I mean, that's kind of true for some other subgenres as well. But
In
what
the rest of
has
my life.
yeah, what has stayed true to the books is the whodunit sort of mystery element of the stories. So that remains intact from the book to the big screen. And that's basically the foundation of Giallo movies, but there's more to it than that. But a lot of it revolves around trying to figure out who the murderer is. So it's
Right.
it's a genre that didn't really translate that well to the American audience. But I mean, we do have Neo Jolly, which are basically Giallo movies that are made outside of Italy, because Giallos are specific to Italy itself. And we have seen a lot of like Neo films coming out in recent years. I think probably the most known one might be like the Neon Demon, which dealt more with like the fashion
Yeah,
industry,
absolutely.
or even like in fabric. Also dealing with the fashion industry. Funny how that just keeps popping up in movies. It was on one of the movies that we recently talking about in some cases with the stylist, which is also
Right.
fantastic. But I felt like, there are certain films in this subgenre that really kind of help ease people into discovering what these movies are all about and just have a deeper appreciation for cinema outright. So I figured, let's talk about some of the Giallo movies that stood out to us that really kind of like got us into it, or just movies that would be a good transition piece to explore more options. So anything coming to the top of your head, because there's a lot to kind of choose from within this genre.
So, I mean, like, one of the one of the films that's considered to be one of the first ones of this, which the one that I talked about before, which is The Girl That Knew Too Much.
Mhm.
Uh, that's a fairly mild sort of introduction to horror in general. I wouldn't. So that's the when you were saying the introductions, I wasn't sure if we wanted to talk about introduction to horror or introduction to giallo.
Mhm.
Whereas this movie is black and white. It's the story is easy to digest. There's not too much grotesque shit going on. And I really love I love black and white horror movies. But honestly, if you really want to get that visceral giallo, you really got to go to the 70s, like you were saying, and see that really hyperpigmentation. Wait, that's something else. Hyperpigmentation, or just those really vibrant colors that were so popular in those movies. Blood that looks like straight up paint because it's so thick,
Mhm.
and a lot of eye stuff. Just a lot of eye stuff. So, and of course, the typical ones come to mind, like Deep Red and whatnot.
Mhm.
How about for you? Which ones are some of your favorites?
Well, Deep Red is definitely one that I would consider to be like the quintessential Giallo piece. I know Suspiria
Mm-hmm.
probably gets way more love for Dario Argento, or just even genre specific. But with Deep Red, you just have more twist to it. You have a very stunning
And more
ending to that
sense.
movie that puts Deep Red just over the top. And yes, it does make a lot more. It's easier to follow and easier to digest for the general audience.
You can be
Uh,
on drugs and you can still understand the movie. Unlike Suspiria, I gotta know what's going on.
But if
It
if
took
I
me
were
like three
to,
watches.
yeah, if I were to like hand select one that I feel like is the easiest one to kind of like blur the lines, I would probably favor Bay of Blood more, which came out in 1971, directed by Mario
Ooh.
Bava, just because that is more of a slasher than it is a Giallo outright. But this is a movie that had such a huge inspiration on Friday the 13th, which came out in 1980. So there are a lot of comparisons between the two, just story wise, and even some of the kills in the movie. But that's probably the easiest comparison piece that someone can have. So if you like Friday the 13th, and if you haven't really checked out a ton
Oh,
of Giallo,
good one.
Bay of Blood is the one to check out. So I believe it might even be on Shutter. I'll have to double check on that, but that's the go-to one for entry level, you know,
I
viewers in these
like it.
days.
Nice. That's much better than my shit. All right, let's do that. So that's why you're watching, everybody.
Yeah. The other one I would recommend came out in 1980, and that is Dress to Kill, which was directed by
Hmm.
Brian De Palma, which is another good like jolly film that offers like the psychological issues, mostly centered around sexuality. So like if you're into more of the psychosexual stuff, Dress to Kill, more up your alley. It's more of like the voyeurism, uh, Jalo entry. So if you're more into that stuff, Dress to Kill is probably going to be the better one out of the lot. But for the general fan
Hmm.
base of Bay of Blood, top of the charts in that regard. But
Nice.
that's where we kind of began. But I want to talk about the recent films that we have seen. So, Holly,
I want to talk about Last Matinee.
I know today you just watched the last matinee, which was
I know. It was
stateside
so amazing.
released stateside a couple of months ago on video on demand, but it came out. I want to say it was
Hmm.
in Spain in 2020, but it's new to the U.S. audience, and
And
I have
it's
to say, when
crazy.
I came into this movie, all I knew about it was I saw the poster and I was like, okay, I'm in. This was a blind watch for me. I knew it was a Neo
Oh, that
Jalo,
must have been nice.
so I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this a shot, and I was blown away by it because really the only thing I had seen on it were like some snippets here and there from Bloody Disgusting, because it was like one of the releases with I think Dark Skies was who
Hmm.
produced it. So that's how it got the release here on the state side. And I know they got like a Blu-ray release coming via Arrow to the UK this December. But why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about this film and your impression on what you got to see displayed on screen?
Impressive. So, one of the biggest things that I liked about it, there was the gore. The gore was pretty fantastic. It was just it really does everything you want it to do.
Mhm.
Whenever a scene is set up for you, you're like, oh no, don't do that thing. Oh, he did it. that he the killer did that no less than like 4 times where I was like, don't you do that. Don't oh he did it.
Mhm.
But what my very favorite thing about this movie is it's set in a movie theater, of course, last night, and it's a not very well attended movie. And I think actually the movie that they were watching was hilarious because clearly it was made for the movie. It
Mhm.
was a baby movie. It was a movie within a movie, and it sucked. But what was really fantastic. So we have all these different groups of people that have come to see the movie. And when I say groups, it's not even multiples. There's one child over here that snuck in. There's one little old man over here by himself. There is a couple on a first date. There is three guns. There's one girl who got stood up, and the movie does such a great job about developing these characters in such a short amount of time because you don't have to care about them,
Mhm.
but essentially it's like a race to the finish, right? Like
Mhm.
you don't know who's going to make it, who's not going to make it, but it gets you invested into each and every character, and then you start seeing them drop. You just start seeing them drop, and you're surprised, and it's astounding because you're like, oh, I thought they were gonna make it because he was such a nice guy,
Mhm.
and I so that part of it was incredibly fun, just very, very engaging. Uh, and then, of course, on the gory side, you have this relentless, just psycho killer who is just basically unstoppable, just
Mhm.
because he's a large man, and the people that have the opportunity to stand up to him are at a significant physical disadvantage. Because he sneaks up on a lot of people, right? But the people that are aware of what's going on there, it's a child, it's teenage girls, and so they really have to use their wits. They really have to run like little rabbits, and it's just fantastic.
Mhm.
And then when you finally get to confront the killer, he's just insane. I mean, his shtick is
Mhm.
just ridiculous. I mean, it's not ridiculous. It's ridiculously gory and awful.
Right.
Where you're like, really, you brought that to a movie theater? Your ice cream scoop? And, not to spoil too quickly, but yeah, I loved it beginning to end. I certainly I was surprised at how many people I wanted to survive.
Mhm.
The first killer was like, nah, that guy needs to go, take him out. But
Mhm.
everybody else was like, no, stop. Which, after desensitizing yourself so much with so much horror, it's kind of fun when you can get that loving feeling back for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, I get
Which
that.
I did, and I loved it.
Yeah, this is definitely one that is more, I would say, slasher elements in regards to the story than
Mm-hmm.
actual Giallo, but it still is the Neo Giallo in this case. But like,
Jolly, because it's a Spanish. Jolly.
and in this case, like as you mentioned, like this film is just taking place in this gorgeous theater on its set in the
Mm-hmm.
1990s. And basically the audience is there because they are attending the last show-in of this horror movie that you mentioned, which is just like a really terrible take on Frankenstein.
Frankenstein?
Yeah. And little do they know that there is a knife-wielding killer beginning to pick them off one by one. And some of the kills I really like. They all deal with practical effects in this movie, which is
Mm-hmm.
a plus for a lot of horror viewers in this case. And the two that I remember vividly are the slit throat smoking kill. Because the guy is smoking gets his throat slit, and you see all the smoke pouring through like the open wound,
Oh
which is
yeah.
fantastic. It kind of reminded
Yes,
me of
absolutely.
like Itchy the Killer in regards to the whole like dragon
Right.
smoke because he's got like the slit smile, which was a pretty cool thing to see. And also, you had that first kiss impalement,
Ah,
which
yeah.
the teenagers are
The
like,
young
man,
lovers.
they've been at it for a while now.
They've been stuck together for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, what's
And then
going on
they
here?
which, if I remember being a teenager correctly, that you can go 10 minutes like
Mhm.
that without moving with shitty kissing techniques. My favorite kills, well, I can't say kills because they weren't kills so much as like parts.
Mhm.
So my favorite part was when you well, no, now that I think about it, I'm pretty basic about it because it's all the ending stuff where you realize that he's scooping out everybody's eyeballs.
And pickling them.
And then
That's
when
the
he
most important
eats and
aspect of it.
pickling them, and he mixes it up, and then he and then of course when he's got to remove his own eyeball, that was pretty great. because I mean, it gives you. We've talked a little bit about how much I like getting a little bit of satisfaction in the middle of a movie when it's a scene like that, and you have the young Anna, who's the projectionist just for the day, covering for her dad, who fights back with a shard of glass and right in the eyeball, and it doesn't kill him, even though it goes pretty deep.
Yeah.
It just kind of gives him the popped out eyeball, which he then has to like cut off himself, and then he apparently puts in his mouth. So yeah, there's so many times like don't
Yeah,
and then he
it's a
does
cool
it.
party trick. That's basically what it is.
It's a pretty cool party trick.
Mhm.
Although I have to say, my favorite part, and yeah, again, so sorry to not be talking about kills. It's just you've got cylindrical objects. You know what you got to do, right? You got to roll them down the stairs.
Mhm.
And that happens, and it's wonderful. And all I could think about was like, that kid is going to need a lot of therapy.
Yeah. Absolutely. So outside of that, we also had the September release of Malignant, directed by James Wan, and I know you haven't had an opportunity to see this, so I'm not
I
gonna be,
tried, man.
I'm not
I
gonna
had
be,
the money.
yeah, I won't be
T,
super
I've
heavy.
literally spent tens of
Mhm,
dollars on this show in a couple of hours. So
mhm, yeah.
just so you know, I am prepared. But no, I was without getting too fancy on my computer, and because I'm not at home with my regular stuff, I was unable to
Mhm,
get it. And it's no longer on HBO Max.
correct.
And so
It's not on VOD yet either, unfortunately.
no,
So
not until the 21st.
you missed the window, unfortunately. But basically, what we have here is James Wan's return to horror with a completely different take, for him anyway, in Malignant. And, we recently discussed Halloween Kills, and how that was very divisive within the horror community. Malignant was very true in that sense as well, where those two have probably divided the audience more than any other releases in the past 10 years that I can think of off the top of my head, which is crazy that they were back to back months, and then it's just like, well, people have already forgotten what came out last month. But that's besides the point. So you had some people who were raving about it, myself included, but others found the levels of absurdity displayed on the screen to be incredibly stupid and just the way that they did
Oh,
things.
all right.
So I had peers who, gave it a shot and were
Mm-hmm.
basically like still engaged with it, and they were still wanting to watch it primarily just because, hey, it's James Wan. But more times than
You
not,
show a little respect.
they were just kind of like left to bewildered. They're like, well, he did all these really cool things, so this has to be good too, right? Dot dot dot.
Right.
And then they were just confused by what was displayed. So
Ah,
Malignant
ah.
is one of those movies that is an experience in its own right, and mileage varies person to person with this type of movie. It's a hard movie to tackle
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
any sort of comparison that I would make to this movie would ruin a major part of the actual movie in the third act. So I can't really say what it reminds me of because of that very thing. So all I will say to you, Holly, is that
Yes.
going in, whenever you do have an opportunity to view this, expect an ungodly level of camp and cheese that you've never seen from a James Wan feature.
That's
So
how I like my movies.
what
That's how
you
I like my
have
burrito.
here, yeah, what you have in Malignant is a movie chock full of these 90s tropes of the genre, which, I think is another thing that could help ease people into actually viewing it. But it's just how much are you willing to actually accept? Because things do get pretty wonky and batshit crazy, and that's why it has been so divisive. But I had a really good time with it. I thought it was an absolute blast. But it's one of those movies that I understand the viewpoints of people not liking it because it is
Mm-hmm.
very absurd in its own right. And when you compare it to the other filmography that James Wan has done, it's just like it's a complete detour that just feels so far out of left field. You're like, wait, James Wan made this movie?
Well, I'm not above not above, but I like my movies kind of messy. I mean, I
Mhm.
know we just I kind of took a dig at Suspiria because it's kind of hard to follow, but I'm a fan of Nightbreed and Society, and those
Mhm.
are batshit crazy movies. So I'm excited to see this.
Yeah, and I know some
I,
people
you know what I'm
too.
going to be doing on the
Mhm.
21st,
Yeah, watching
which
it.
is tomorrow. It comes out tomorrow.
Or, as of when this airs, like a week and a half ago. But that's besides the point. But it's one of the interesting things about this is James Wan envisioned this as Giallo, but it doesn't necessarily have all of those elements. Like you do have like the leather gloves, you have the mystery
Mhm.
behind the killer, you have very grotesque kills and over the top cheese aspects as well. Uh, but there's not as much mystery behind the killer itself compared to the traditional whodunit. But outside of that,
Right.
everything kind of falls
Okay.
where you would kind of expect it for the subgenres. So I definitely recommend it. And you're either gonna love it or you're gonna hate it. I don't think there's gonna be a middle ground. But
Well, I'm excited to find out.
you enjoy a lot more of just variety. So I'm assuming it's gonna be right up your alley.
Oh, that's exciting. I'm just so happy with all the different all the movies, all the content coming out. It's just it's definitely a horror lover's paradise these days.
Mhm.
I dig it. So many streaming services too. So I'm really blown away by like how many different places we can go ahead and view horror movies for free. So, and then it doesn't matter though. I still pay money for some of
Mhm.
them. Like, shit, $4.
I'm
Wow,
pretty.
that's just a drink at a bar.
Mhm.
Let's just do this.
I remember reading it earlier today, and as we're recording this, this is a week and a half before the convention, that Bloody Disgusting had partnered with Screambox, which is another horror streaming
Ooh,
service.
Screambox.
So looks like they're.
I'll be getting
I think
Screambox
I think
soon.
Bloody Disgusting is actually like taking it over. So hopefully their catalog is going to improve because I
Nice.
remember watching it in the past or doing a trial, wasn't too impressed when you compared it to like Shutter. So hopefully with this uh joint effort, things are going to improve just
That
across
was a
the
great
bar.
setup, and that was accidental. Screambox.
Yeah.
I'll be getting it soon.
Yeah, so hopefully we get to see some improvements on their end just to have, another option out there because, we do just have the go-tos with, Shutter. I mean, Netflix does have genre pieces.
Hmm.
Oh, some of them are, kind of like direct-to-DVD things, much like you would expect for like Hulu. Hulu has a lot of those as well. And you also have streaming sites that have more of the, like grindhouse type stuff and more schlocky films like Midnight
There's
Pulp.
I just saw some random ones on a Roku TV that I have. It was
Mhm.
something called like Fossum, and there was another one too. I was like, holy crap, no shit. So I was just impressed about
Mhm.
the number of choices that I had. So good stuff. It's a good October this year.
Absolutely, and hopefully next year is going to deliver just as much. But speaking of October, we cannot talk about this year's releases without talking about the upcoming release of Last Night in Soho, directed by
Ooh.
Edgar Wright. So, Edgar Wright returned into the horror genre after he did, Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead. He also made Baby Driver, which is honestly like a top 5 film of any genre for
Damn,
me, which is
that
fantastic.
dude does not know how to fail. Good job.
It's
I love
just
all of his movies.
hit after hit, which is great to see. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited. So what we have here is Last Night in Soho follows a young woman who has a passion for fashion design. Funny enough, a lot of these films are going back straight to the fashion industry, and she has this strange sixth sense. Where she finds herself transported to 1966 London in the body of a nightclub singer of the 60s named Sandy. So while she's in Sandy's body, she begins a romantic relationship, but begins to realize that Sandy's life isn't as glamorous as it
Mm.
looks to be, and both past and present begin to fall apart with horrifying consequences. So I'm sure you've seen this advertised in theaters or online, and a lot of the promo work has revolved around the 1964 classic from Petula Clark, Downtown, which is like the
Mm-hmm.
centerpiece for the promotional stuff here. And you have Taylor Joy's version offering a more, moody take to the song,
Sure.
which has like the orchestral backing behind it. And I know they just released the music video for it earlier today, as a matter of fact. I was watching it. And what I love about this is the casting of this movie. And for Edgar Wright, it just seems so perfect because this is a director who had lived in London for 27 years, And most of that time was spent in Soho rather than other places that he had lived. So is this more
Neat.
of a comfort area for him? So he wanted to make sure not only did he have the present time perfect for his surroundings, but he also wanted to capture that 1960s aesthetic also in the same area. So I'm really looking forward to this. And Taylor
It's gonna be
Joy
good.
has
She's so hot right now.
she's been in so many things, right? Like, obviously
The witch.
the witch is the first thing that was the catalyst. That was the spark that lit the
Mhm.
flame, and then we had Morgan, which she was the main character in. She was in Split, also the sequel for Glass. She was prominent in The New Mutants. Granted, that was an absolutely trash movie, besides the point. But she was also in The Queen's Gambit. So she's done movies,
Mhm.
she's done TV, but like, talk about a strain of work. Like, I can't remember someone
Yeah, good
blowing up this
job.
quick and just being so prominently featured in her shoes. So she really feels like almost a modern day Scream Queen in her own right.
She really does, and good for her. We have a couple of those coming up. We reviewed recently The Guest, and can you
Mhm.
remind me that actress's name?
Oh, I don't have it on hand. I'll pull up IMDb, but she was the
Let's
one
do it.
who was in It Follows.
Exactly. She's really wonderful. Like, it's just exciting to see all these awesome actors getting a chance to really shine and giving us a chance to fall in love with them every time.
It was Maka Monroe.
Oh, there you go. I was never going to remember that. That's all I got, T.
Yeah, I got that. So outside of this, obviously, like, the witch was the thing that gravitated right towards, uh, Taylor Joy, and just fell in love with her when it premiered in Sundance back in 2015.
Hmm.
And we've seen her rise to prominence, and one of the things that I'm interested about is just the story that this is telling, because a lot of it, in Wright's own words, is a lot of people kind of like glamorize the past, but they only
Hmm.
remember like the good things about it. They kind of just shy
Like the
away
fashion,
from all of the yes, like the fashion, or the
the injustice, the
hairstyles,
oppression.
or the music at the time, or the movies. You can go on and on about multiple different facets of life in this case. But this is basically going to be a cautionary tale of those who are like overly nostalgic about the past. Because like there really has been no perfect decade where everything was
It's
good
me.
and then nothing was bad,
Never been
because
good.
that doesn't exist.
It does not. It's just like, oh, I'm just
Mhm,
really into old money, as it turns out. So I'm looking forward to this because I think it's gonna speak to me.
mhm.
I'm glad. I'm excited.
So yeah, I'm very curious to see if this is going to be more of the slasher approach to Giallo, or if it's going to be straight Giallo. But either way, everything I
Mm.
have seen about this movie, and I've really liked the promotional work that they've done, because when the first trailer came out, they did it from the fashion designer's perspective, and then on the next one, they did the opposite, where they were focusing more on the singer. So we kind of got two different views of the movie already, and then we get to see them
Mm.
both merge when the movie comes out theatrically. So I'm looking forward to it. I know a lot of other people are as well. But when people were talking like their most hyped movie for 2021, I know a lot of people were like, Halloween Kills. I can't wait to see the continuation. And
Ha!
some
How'd
people
that turn out?
definitely regretted that. But for me, Edgar Wright's track record, just the fact that I love this subgenre so much, and it's not one that gets featured all that much on the state side. So knowing that he's behind it gives me a lot of faith. And Taylor Joy's always fantastic to watch on the screen, and she
She is. She's
fits
fantastic.
like that 60s look so perfectly. So it's like a match
She
made in
really
heaven.
does. Agreed. Yep. I can't wait. And I love Jalo and Jali. Fantastic.
Yeah, so I really hope this is a subgenre that continues to blow up. Yes, like all of this stuff didn't hit like back to back to back like we have seen with the recent slasher resurgence, and hopefully that's going to continue to pick up some steam as well. But I like when we have these snippets here and there where we have these pockets of certain subgenres really exploding and flourishing, because it's a good reminder of what else is out there within the genre, because not all of these get the heavy focus because not a lot of them are really released in the West
Right.
because so much of it is just based in Europe in this case. So I'm looking forward to this. Hopefully, it lives up to my expectations and we don't have another Halloween Kills on our hands. But I don't think that's going to be the case for this one in particular.
And I'm in a good mood this month. I think,
Hmm.
I'm gonna see it in the best possible mind frame of mind.
Hmm.
I'm ready to love, is what I'm trying to say. I'm ready to love again.
Absolutely. So with that being said, Holly, I think we wrap things up for tonight. So for everyone
Yeah, I
watching,
gotta go. My cat's really upset.
yeah, the cat's gonna probably like claw the earphones out again, like they tried to do earlier. Uh, but stay tuned for the rest of the Slash and Cast Network virtual Halloween convention. We have been Handle with Scare. We have new episodes on podcatchers every Thursday. Usually we focus on a specific phobia each month, and then we do 4 films or 5, depending on how many weeks there are, for each different phobia. And you can find us online, both on Instagram at Handle with Scare Pod. We're on Twitter at Handle with Scare. And you can visit our website on at handlewithscarepod.com. But for now, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.